Millions in Syria and Iraq are facing water shortages as the region's longest river, the Euphrates, dries up.
This footprint is 6 meters long.
Surfaced to rewrite ancient history. The ground is opening, the water is disappearing, and what's rising from beneath the Euphrates is forcing people to ask questions no one expected to face. A river tied to ancient prophecy is drying in real time, revealing caves, ruins, and signs that seem to echo warnings written thousands of years ago. Across the world, strange sounds are being heard, patterns are forming, and the timing is impossible to ignore. Before we go further, take a moment to like this video and share what you think, because what's unfolding right now may not just be history being uncovered, it could be a signal that something much bigger has already begun. The Euphrates River has flowed for thousands of years, shaping civilizations, sustaining entire nations, and standing as one of the most historically significant waterways on Earth. But now, that same river is fading visibly, rapidly, and in ways that are becoming harder to ignore. Across large stretches of Iraq and Syria, the waterline has pulled back, exposing cracked earth where currents once moved steadily. What used to be a powerful river is now, in some areas, reduced to scattered channels and dry ground. Millions of people depend on this river for drinking water, agriculture, and daily survival. As levels continue to drop, crops fail, livestock struggle, and entire communities face increasing uncertainty. Officials point to reduced rainfall, rising temperatures, and upstream dam activity as contributing factors. These explanations are real, measurable, and supported by data. But even with those factors considered, the scale and speed of this decline have raised concern among researchers who did not expect such dramatic changes so quickly. Satellite imagery now confirms what people on the ground have already seen. Large sections of the river have reached some of the lowest levels ever recorded in modern history. Areas once submerged for decades are now fully exposed. Ancient layers of land untouched for generations are beginning to appear again. And that is where the situation begins to shift from environmental to something more unsettling. Because this exact scenario, this river, drying at a critical moment, was described long ago. In the book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 12, it speaks of the Euphrates being dried up to prepare the way for what comes next. Not reduced, not weakened, but dried. Is this just a natural crisis, or the beginning of something far more significant? As the waters of the Euphrates River continued to recede, what emerged was not just dry land, but an opening. A massive cave system, previously hidden beneath the river for generations, suddenly became visible. Its entrance is wide, far wider than a natural crack or erosion point would suggest, stretching deep into darkness, as if leading somewhere far below the surface. What makes this even more unsettling is what the locals are saying. People who have lived in this region their entire lives insist that this cave was never there before. Not partially hidden, not seasonal, completely unseen, and now it stands exposed. As if something that had been sealed for a long time has finally been uncovered. But it's not just the appearance of the cave, it's what's coming from inside. At night, witnesses describe a deep, vibrating sound echoing from within. Not like wind, not like water, something heavier, slower, almost mechanical, yet organic, at the same time. The sound seems to travel through the ground itself, creating a low pressure that can be felt, not just heard. Some say it comes in waves. Others claim it never fully stops. More disturbing are the reports of voices faint, unclear, and not matching any known language. While these accounts remain unverified, the consistency of the descriptions has caused growing concern. Families living closest to the area have begun packing up and leaving, choosing distance over uncertainty. Scientists have attempted to explain it. Underground acoustics, shifting rock formations, and trapped air pockets can sometimes create unusual sounds. Geological pressure changes could also amplify vibrations in enclosed spaces like caves. These are valid explanations, and in many cases, they are correct. But for the people who live there, those explanations don't fully answer what they're experiencing. To them, this isn't just a cave. It's something that was once sealed, now opening. And that idea echoes an ancient warning, and the earth opened its mouth. Revelation 12:16. Before we go deeper, stay with this, because what appears next may connect everything we've seen so far in a way no one expected. And what was heard inside that cave didn't stay there. Reports of the same low-frequency sound have begun surfacing far beyond the region of the Euphrates River, across parts of Europe, Poland, Romania, and beyond. Witnesses describe a deep, metallic hum echoing through the sky, not thunder, not aircraft. A steady, vibrating tone that seems to linger, as if it's coming from somewhere just out of sight. People report windows trembling, air pressure shifting, and an unsettling feeling that something is resonating through the atmosphere itself. Recordings have circulated, capturing a sound that feels both mechanical and unnatural, too structured to be random, yet too unfamiliar to be identified. Authorities have investigated these reports, but the explanations remain limited. Weather systems do not match the pattern. Seismic activity has been ruled out. Aviation records show no aircraft in the affected areas. The usual answers simply don't fit. And then comes the connection. That same sound, identical in tone and frequency, has been recorded near the Euphrates. But here, it doesn't come from the sky. It comes from below, from within the cave that emerged when the water disappeared, from deep beneath the ground. Two different locations, two opposite directions, yet one unmistakable pattern. This is where the situation shifts, because isolated events can be explained. But synchronized ones, especially across continents, raise a different kind of question. The Bible once described a moment when sound itself would signal a transition. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. 1 Corinthians 15:52. Whether symbolic or literal, the idea remains the same: sound as a marker, sound as a signal. And now, hearing the same resonance from both above and below, the question becomes harder to ignore. If this isn't random, then what is it pointing to? Along the newly exposed banks of the Euphrates River, something else has been discovered, something that doesn't fit into any known category of natural explanation. Massive footprints began appearing across the soft, drying ground, not scattered randomly, but forming a path. Clear impressions, deep and defined, as if something heavy had walked across the surface not long after the water disappeared. What makes these prints so unsettling is their size. Each one is far larger than any human footprint ever recorded. The depth suggests significant weight, while the spacing between each step indicates a stride far beyond normal human capability. Whatever left these marks was not only large, but moving with purpose. There are no signs of machinery, no tire tracks, no disturbances around the prints that would suggest human interference or fabrication. The edges remain sharp, the impressions consistent, and the pattern uninterrupted. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they stop. No continuation, no clear direction. As if whatever made them simply vanished beyond the visible path. This is where ancient texts begin to echo what we're seeing. In Genesis 6, there is a reference to the Nephilim beings described as giants who lived on the earth in ancient times. The text speaks of figures of great size and strength, unlike ordinary humans, connected to events that led to widespread corruption and judgment. For many, this has always been considered symbolic or mythological. But standing over footprints that cannot be easily explained, the question begins to shift. Could these marks be nothing more than a rare natural formation? Possibly, but if they're not, then they raise a deeper question. Have traces of the past begun to surface again? Take a moment and share your thoughts below, because what you believe about this could change how you see everything that follows. Beneath the retreating waters of the Euphrates River, the outlines of an ancient city have begun to reappear stone by stone, layer by layer. What was once hidden under sediment and flowing water is now visible again, revealing fragments of walls, foundations, and pathways that suggest a structured and organized civilization. These are not random ruins. The alignment of the stones, the spacing of the structures, and the depth of what remains all point to a place that once held purpose, activity, and life. Archaeological patterns indicate that this city had been buried for a very long time, possibly centuries, if not longer. The sediment covering it suggests that it was submerged gradually, preserved beneath layers of mud and water until now, and yet, its sudden reappearance raises a question not just about history, but about timing. Among the uncovered remains, there have been reports of a manuscript or fragment of ancient writing discovered near the site. While details remain limited and unverified, the description of its content has drawn attention. It speaks of a period when what was once restrained would be released, and when a sequence of events would unfold, leading to judgment. Whether symbolic or literal, the message appears to align with themes found in multiple ancient texts. One verse comes to mind with striking clarity: "For nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light." End quote. Luke 8:17. This moment seems to reflect that idea with precision. A city once lost is now visible again. Structures once buried are now standing in open air. Words once written and forgotten are now resurfacing, at a time when similar warnings are being discussed across the world. What is being revealed is not just physical remains, but fragments of a past that may have been deliberately concealed, preserved, until a specific moment. And now, as the river continues to recede, both history and meaning appear to be emerging together, side by side, in a way that feels less like coincidence and more like alignment. Ancient writings have never treated the Euphrates River as just a river. In the Book of Enoch, there are detailed accounts of fallen angels, beings that stepped out of their divine order, being bound beneath the earth, not destroyed, not erased, but chained, restrained in darkness, reserved for a specific appointed time. These were not ordinary beings. They were described as powerful, influential, and dangerous enough to require imprisonment. And the Bible does not stay silent on this. In Revelation 9:14-15, the wording becomes strikingly direct. 4 angels are bound at the great river Euphrates, not symbolically tied to it, but held there, restrained, waiting. These are not described as harmless or passive. They are portrayed as forces capable of unleashing destruction on a global scale once released. What stands out is not just the description, but the precision. The passage speaks of timing, an exact moment prepared in advance, a release that follows a sequence, and within that sequence, the Euphrates is not incidental, it is central. It is the location, the boundary, the place of restraint. For generations, this has often been interpreted as symbolic language, meant to represent something abstract, distant, or spiritual. But now, as the river itself begins to physically change, that interpretation feels less certain, because if the Euphrates was more than a river, if it served as a covering, a boundary, even a form of containment, then its disappearance raises a far deeper question, not just about prophecy, but about containment. If fallen angels were truly bound, held beneath, restrained until a specific moment, then the condition of that region would matter, the water above it would matter. The barrier itself would matter, and now that barrier is fading. As the river withdraws, exposing what has been sealed for generations, the connection becomes harder to dismiss. The texts spoke of beings bound, of a location defined, of a moment appointed, and now the location is changing in real time. If the river was the boundary, what happens when that boundary is gone? When you look at everything happening right now, one thing becomes clear: it's not random. The Euphrates River is drying. A cave appears where there was none before. Strange sounds are being reported in multiple countries. Massive footprints show up without explanation. Ancient ruins are rising from beneath the surface. At the same time, tensions are increasing between Israel, Iran, and the United States.
Well, West Asia is at a breaking point. Israel and U.S. have continued their aerial bombardment campaign.
Military pressure is building. Warnings are being exchanged. The situation is getting tighter, not calmer. Now compare this with what the Bible described. Revelation speaks about the Euphrates drying before major global events. It also talks about rising conflict between nations and a sequence that leads to something much bigger. What we are seeing now follows that same pattern. The river is drying. The region is becoming unstable. Global tensions are increasing. Unusual signs are appearing at the same time. Each of these can be explained on its own, but when all of them happen together at the same time, it becomes harder to ignore. This is not just a series of random events. It looks like a sequence unfolding. What was written thousands of years ago is no longer just words on a page. It is starting to look like events happening in real time. Not everything is fully clear yet, but the direction is becoming more obvious. If this continues, then the question is no longer if. It becomes what comes next. As the Euphrates River continues to recede, the focus no longer stays on what has already happened, but on what the Bible says will happen next. Because in Revelation, the river is not just a detail. It marks a moment, a turning point. Revelation describes a specific event. 4 angels that have been bound, restrained at the Euphrates. Not wandering, not symbolic, held in place, waiting for a precise time. And the wording is clear. They are prepared for an exact hour, day, month, and year. This is not random timing, it is appointed. And when that moment arrives, they are released. But the Bible does not stop there. It also describes what follows. Revelation 9:15 states, "Then the 4 angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind." This is not symbolic language about small events. It describes a global impact, massive, sudden, and irreversible. The passage continues by describing a force connected to them. The number of the mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000, Revelation 9:16, an immense number, a scale beyond anything seen before. Whether understood literally or not, the message is clear. This is not a localized event. It is something that spreads, something that affects the world on a level humanity cannot control. That is why the condition of the river matters, because if the Euphrates was part of what held that moment back, if it marked the boundary of when this sequence begins, then what is happening now raises a serious question, not about theory, but about timing. The Bible presents this as a warning, not just a prediction. It shows what will happen, so that when the signs appear, people recognize them before it unfolds completely. And that is where we are now. The river is changing. The signs are increasing. The pattern is forming. No one can say the exact moment. But the sequence is already written. And if that moment is approaching, then the real question is not what they will do, it is whether we are ready when it begins. The message at this point becomes clear. It is not meant to create fear, but awareness. Not to overwhelm, but to awaken. What matters now is not reacting with panic, but responding with understanding. In the Bible, Abraham is remembered for one defining reason: faith. He moved forward without knowing the full picture. He trusted even when the outcome was unclear. When logic gave him reasons to hesitate, he chose to rely on trust instead. His faith was not built on what he could see, but on who he believed. That same principle still applies, because in uncertain times, the real question is not how much we can explain, but what we choose to stand on. Clarity does not always come first. Understanding does not always come immediately. But direction is shaped by what we trust, not just what we know. Preparation, then, is not about control. It is not about trying to predict every outcome or manage every possibility. It is about building something within that does not shift when everything outside does. Faith is not passive. It is not waiting without action. It is choosing to stand firm when things feel unstable. It is remaining steady when answers are incomplete. And when everything around begins to change, that is what holds. If this speaks to you, take a moment to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe. Thank you for being here and staying until the end.